Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Live Chat with James here at the studios of ProPix TV in Metro Vancouver. Tonight we are going to take a look at the RCMP, its history, how far it's come, and some special points along the way. We'll also take a look at how the RCMP is being impacted by attitudes that actually stem from U.S. media and U.S. law enforcement. Don't get me wrong, we of course have a lot of issues when it comes to the Royal Canadian Mounted Police and the systemic racism, the treatment of women within the ranks, and other issues that need to be dealt with and are being dealt with. Whether or not they're being dealt with quickly enough and taken seriously enough is another question. We also have to take a look into the mental health of police officers, whether it's the RCMP or local forces across the nation. We know that there are struggles when it comes to mental health issues. Police officers are much higher and in some instances 3 to 4 times more likely to contemplate or attempt suicide than normal civilians. Now, as we take a look though, we are going to look at various parts of the history. There is an image. It's instantly and globally recognizable, and that's a rider. The straight-backed rider on a perfectly black horse, the scarlet tunic, the wide-brimmed Stetson hat, and the ceremonial lance. This is the Mountie, and for over a century, this image has been a symbol of not only a police force, but of Canada itself. People recognize it the world over. A shorthand for order, politeness, and incorruptible sense of duty. We know that there is and there has been some corruption within the institution, but overall it is regarded as one of the top 10 security forces and law enforcement agencies in the world. So again, it really weighs heavy that we have a position that needs to be upheld in the world. Today, there's a second image, and that's one that fights for our attention. It is the image of a 42,000 person modern policing agency, often clad not in the red serge, but in tactical body armor. It's an institution in a state of crisis, grappling with declining public trust, accusations of deep systemic racism, a legacy of internal sexual harassment and litigation, and what a 2022 commission heard was a profound misallocation of its resources. How did that first image, the icon, come to be, and how did it become so profoundly disconnected from the second, the reality? Well, this is a story of the two Mounties, the myth and the mandate. The myth is a powerful cultural export, a hero created on the frontier and supercharged by Hollywood. The mandate is the complex, sprawling, and deeply troubled reality of a national institution. The greatest strength of the Royal Mounted Police, or the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, its world famous brand, and it has, in the 21st century, become its greatest liability. The myth of perfection creates an impossible standard, one that the real world institution can never meet. And when it fails, the fall is more shocking. Tonight we're going to explore the 150-year history of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, from a 300-man frontier patrol to a vast and complex national institution struggling to define itself. Live Chat with James tonight is brought to you by our sponsor, Carry Movers Limited. Carry Movers is Canada's proudly family-owned and operated moving service. Just as we're about to discuss the Great March West, it feels appropriate to thank a company that truly understands the challenges of moving in Western and Northern Canada. For over 20 years, Carry Movers Limited has been a proudly Canadian family-owned and operated company. They've been helping families, businesses, and corporations with local moves in Metro Vancouver and the Fraser Valley, and with long-distance relocation throughout Western and Northern Canada. They're a company built on trust and integrity, and of course, the service provider for many RCMP officers as they have moved throughout Metro Vancouver and Western Canada. You can find them online at www.carrymovers.com. That's www.carrymovers.com for information on your moving needs. Now, our story begins on May the 23rd, 1873, and the Dominion of Canada is a new country, and its first Prime Minister, Sir John A. Macdonald, has a problem. He has just acquired a vast untamed territory, Rupert's Land as it's known, from the Hudson's Bay Company. This new Northwest Territories is a power vacuum, and American traders and expansionists are threatening to fill it. MacDonald's vision is a paramilitary police force modeled on British colonial forces to preserve peace and the prevention of crime. The stated mandate of this new Northwest Mounted Police, or the NWMP, is clear: to stop the illegal American whiskey trade, patrol the border, supervise treaties with Indigenous peoples, and above all, assert Canadian sovereignty to pave the way for a national railway. In the summer of 1874, the force's legend begins. The first 150 to 300 recruits have gathered at Fort Dufferin, Manitoba, set out on their march west. The legend of this march is not one of incredible bravery, endurance, and determination. It is all of those things, not one in itself. It has become a foundational myth of Canadian perseverance. The reality, however, was something else entirely. Historian William Baker describes the expedition as a monumental fiasco of poor planning, ignorance, incompetence, and cruelty to men and beasts. The expedition was badly planned and almost failed. And yet the force's public relations function appears to be operational from that day one. That monumental fiasco was rapidly portrayed by the force itself as an epic story of bravery. When the exhausted force finally reached the notorious Fort Whoop-Up, as a supposed den of lawless American whiskey traders, they prepared for a confrontation. They found the fort, but the traders, having heard they were coming, had long since moved on. The mission was an anticlimax. Now, this reveals the critical truth about the force, present from its very inception. The perception of its success was often more strategically important than the reality of its operations. The force's primary value to MacDonald was not just its policing ability, but its visibility. It was a performative act of nation building. The force's real early work quickly became clear. It was to be the enforcement arm of settlement. The Northwest Mounted Police was tasked with protecting the construction of the new Canadian Pacific Railway. This meant suppressing Indigenous resistance to the railway being built through their lands. The historical record shows the police made arrests when horses were stolen or work was disrupted, and the government reduced rations for First Nations. By 1883, the threat of starvation had forced the First Nations to relocate to reserves north of the railway line, clearing the plains for the new Canada. While the force did employ First Nations and Métis guides, scouts, and interpreters, its primary mandate was to be the vanguard of a new colonial order. But the force's reputation as uniquely effective police force would be forged, not on the prairies, but in the ice of the north. When the Klondike Gold Rush began in 1896, the Northwest Mounted Police was deployed to the Yukon. Their mission was simple: prevent the lawlessness that had defined the American Wild West. While thousands of unruly prospectors flooded American towns like Skagway, the Northwest Mounted Police held the Canadian border. They set up detachments at the summits of White and Chilkoot passes. They also collected customs duties from every person entering Canada. The man in charge was Inspector Sam Steele, who was both policeman and magistrate. He was, in effect, the law. Historians have described his rule over the Yukon as effectively a police state. The geography certainly helped. It was relatively easy to bar entry to undesirables. But Steele's men were famously paternalistic and authoritarian. They were known to invent non-existent laws when they considered it necessary. And it worked. Dawson City, though wild and boisterous, was safe. There were no lynch mobs or gangsters, no guns. Saloons and houses of prostitution had strict Sunday closings. This was the moment the international image of the orderly, polite, and safe Canadian North was born. And it's crucial to understand what this means. The Canadian identity of peace, order, and good government is often contrasted with the American's life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The Klondike shows isn't just a philosophical difference, it's an operational one. The order so praised in the Mountie mythos was achieved through authoritarian police action that valued state control above individual liberty. The Mountie was not a police officer in the American sense, waiting for a crime to happen. He was an agent of the state, and the state's first priority was order. This success cemented the force's reputation. In 1904, it was rebranded as the Royal Northwest Mounted Police, or the RNWMP. But the end of the First World War, the force's time was running out. By 1919, the Royal Northwest Mounted Police was considered rapidly obsolete. Its frontier mandate was over. This is the single most important moment in the force's modern history. Prime Minister Robert Borden met with Commissioner A.B. Perry, who proposed a new plan. On February the 1st, 1920, the government enacted a shotgun wedding of a merger. The Western Royal North Mounted Police, the Colonial Policing Force, was amalgamated with a completely different organization, the Eastern Dominion Police. Now, the Dominion Police was not a frontier patrol. It was a secretive, bureaucratic agency responsible for federal law enforcement, intelligence gathering, and parliamentary security in eastern Canada. On February the 1st, 1920, this new hybrid entity was named the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. Its headquarters was moved from the frontier in Regina to the bureaucracy of Ottawa. In 1920, the amalgamation is the original sin of the modern RCMP. It created a bureaucratic monster by smashing two incompatible police cultures into one. It fused the visible symbolic colonial culture of the Royal Northwest Mounted Police with the secretive urban intelligence culture of the Dominion Police. This new force inherited the Mountie's iconic red surge and the Dominion Police's mandate for dirty work. The structural conflict, this bureaucratic contradiction, is the root of endless confusion over accountability that haunts the force to this very day. It's also when the force adopted its motto. And in telling detail, the force had originally used the grammatically incorrect maintien le droit, and I probably pronounced that wrong, but it took a French-speaking officer by the name of Inspector Charles Auguste Rail to write a letter in 1914 pointing out the error, which was finally corrected. As the real force was becoming a complex Ottawa-based bureaucracy, its myth was being perfected, not in Canada, but in California. Hollywood in the 1920s and 30s fell in love with the image of the Mountie. Over 250 films were made about the force, creating a powerful fiction that the real RCMP quickly lost control of. The most famous or infamous of these was the 1936 MGM musical, Rosemarie. It starred Nelson Eddy as the heroic and perpetually singing Mountie, Sergeant Bruce. The plot was pure melodrama. The noble Mountie is ordered to arrest his sweetheart's fugitive brother. The real RCMP hated it. RCMP Commissioner Clifford Harvison later lamented that fiction has outweighed fact and created an image of the RCMP that is closer to the Hollywood-style Rosemarie kind of Mountie than the real thing. The Rosemarie archetype was so strong, so pure, and so ripe for parody that it led directly to one of animation's greatest characters, and that was Dudley Do-Right. Now, Dudley Do-Right is a direct spoof of Nelson Eddy's singing sergeant. He is dim-witted, but conscientious and cheerful. He is the pure moral bumbling hero whose arch-nemesis is Snidely Whiplash, whose love interest, Nell Fenwick, famously prefers his horse named Horse. This troupe was modernized again in 1990s with the popular television series Due South. Paul Gross played Constable Benton Fraser, an impossibly polite, noble, and morally upright Mountie, the deadly archetype, who is dropped into the cynical, corrupt world of Chicago. And here is the fascinating cultural exchange. American media created a Mountie archetype that was paradoxically fundamentally un-Canadian. The real Canadian Mountie was established in the Klondike. He was an agent of the state, a paternalistic enforcer of central authority. The American Western genre, by contrast, is a narrative of rugged individualism. Hollywood loved the uniform but rejected the ideology. They took the Canadian red coat and superimposed their own cultural narrative onto it. They replaced the agent of the state with an individual hero, the aristocrat, a seductive male hero distinct from the wilder masculinities of American popular culture heroes. The Hollywood Mountie is, in effect, an American cultural product, and this American-made myth of the polite, heroic, infallible Dudley Do-Right is the image that became the dominant global perception, creating an impossible expectation that the real bureaucratic and very human force could never hope to meet. We are discussing a force whose mandate and reputation have been moved and relocated for 150 years. We want to take a moment for the people who do it right. Yes, we are talking about our episode sponsor once again, Carry Movers Limited. When you're planning a move, whether you're for your family, your business, or a large corporation, the most important thing is trust. Carry Movers Limited has built its 20-year reputation on trust and integrity. They offer local moves in Metro Vancouver and the Fraser Valley, and of course, long-distance relocations across Western and Northern Canada, all with accountability that only a proudly Canadian family-owned business can provide. Visit them at www.carrymovers.com. Now, as we go on about this history of the RCMP and their amazing work that they do across this nation, let's take a quick peek at some video footage here. Now, first we'll just take a quick peek at the Depot Division, which is in Manitoba, and sorry, I'm just pulling that up, and let's take a look here. So this is where the careers of the Mounties begin. Here we are looking at the road that leads in to the RCMP Academy Depot Division. And there is also a lot of history to be seen here. And you can visit this location anytime. So it is accessible to the public. You can find some great things to visit. You can also pay honor to the Mounties who have lost their lives in the line of duty and see where the next generation of RCMP officers are training and working hard. Let's next take a quick peek at a couple of videos from the RCMP. First of all, we'll take a look at this one that just kind of gives you a quick overview of the RCMP in itself and their duties.
The Royal Canadian Mounted Police has been keeping Canadians safe since 1873. From coast to coast to coast, we provide crime prevention, investigation, law enforcement, and safety services at the community, provincial, territorial, and federal levels, as well as internationally. Today, we are more than 20,000 police officers, supported by nearly 10,000 civilian employees in over 700 detachments across the country. We are evolving as a modern and innovative police force made up of people who care about their work, their communities, and each other. Our diverse and inclusive workforce gives us the ability to serve all Canadians better. It all starts at the RCMP Training Academy, better known as Depot, in Regina, Saskatchewan. During the year, Depot accommodates up to 40 troops. Each troop consists of 32 cadets. Cadets spend 26 weeks learning the basics of police sciences, cultural awareness, firearms, driving, problem solving, and defensive tactics. Through interactive training, cadets master policing skills and learn how to stay safe and cope with the physical and mental demands of a career in policing. Our police officers are posted across the country and can specialize in over 150 fields of policing expertise. Financial crime, forensic identification, tactical and emergency response, cybercrime, police dog services, VIP protection, and marine services. Our civilian employees play critical, specialized support roles, including administrative support, 911 dispatchers, criminal intelligence analysts, engineers, and financial experts. Together, we make up the RCMP. In many municipalities and Indigenous communities, we are the local police, patrolling the streets, visiting schools, and answering thousands of calls for service assistance. Reconciliation and community engagement help build safety for all. In all provinces and territories except Ontario and Quebec, the RCMP acts as the provincial or territorial police, enforcing everything from traffic to liquor laws and supporting local police agencies. Our federal and international mandates require us to tackle crimes that cross borders, from fraud and counterfeiting, human and drug trafficking, child exploitation and cybercrime, all the way up to terrorism and threats to national security. Around the world, we contribute to international policing efforts to help stabilize countries and train local police. Finally, we provide protective services for the Governor General and Prime Minister, as well as other designated VIPs and dignitaries. Our strength is in delivering timely, thorough, high-quality police work that keeps our communities safe. We are committed to our people, our employees, the communities we serve, and all Canadians. For more information or to join our team, visit rcmp.gc.ca.
So again, that just gives you kind of their perspective as to the overview of what the RCMP encompasses. And a lot of people, when they look at the RCMP patrolling the streets, maybe pulling them over, giving them a traffic citation, or being involved in different community events and such, they're not seeing the broader picture of the impact the RCMP has. Now, they are, as you saw in that video, available to international governments and law enforcement agencies to train to offer some type of stability in unstable regions. They help to deploy special services and training to law enforcement in all different aspects of law enforcement and investigation. They also look at national security as well as international security as well. This ranges from migrant ships leaving the shores of foreign nations through to container ships or other methods in which human traffickers can use to get individuals smuggled into the country. The RCMP is very involved in these investigations, and a lot of times that starts on foreign soil, and they are there to work with their counterparts, whether that's through Interpol or other international agreements and arrangements. So there's a lot more going on behind the scenes than what the normal or everyday public can actually see, and a lot of times more than what the public is actually aware of. And I think that's really important to realize, because they are also instrumental in stopping online crimes, whether that's against children or others. It's very important to understand how much they play a role in that investigatory process on Canadian soil and off of Canadian soil. So again, very important to realize and to understand the depth of which the RCMP takes its hold and offers services around the globe. Now, going back to the discussion that we were having before the video, of course, while Hollywood was building the myth of the Mountie in the 1930s, the Great Depression was building its mandate. There was the force's structural flaw. That 1920 amalgamation grew into an unmanageable three-headed mandate. First head was the local police. In 1928, Saskatchewan, suffering financially during the Depression, disbanded its provincial police force and signed a contract with the federal RCMP to take over its duties. This became the model. In 1932, Alberta, Manitoba, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Prince Edward Island all did the same, and then British Columbia and Newfoundland and Labrador followed in 1950. This police force that we have today, a federal agency that through these contracts also acts as the local police force for 8 provinces, 3 territories, and over 150 municipalities, plus 600 Indigenous communities. Now, the second head is the federal and international partner. The RCMP and the FBI, for example, have a 100-year-long partnership. They exchange intelligence and track cross-border fugitives. In the 1930s, they cooperated to catch train robbers. In 1968, the RCMP helped track Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassin, James Earl Ray, when he fled to Canada. In 1999, they worked together to stop the Millennium Bomber, Ahmed Ressam at the border. Today, this partnership focuses on fighting transnational organized crime and terrorism. Now, the third head, of course, is the international symbol. The Mountie in his red serge has become a key part of Canada's peacekeeping identity. Over 4,000 Canadian police officers, many from the RCMP, have served in UN missions. The most notable has been a 30-year commitment to Haiti, where Canadian police have helped train the Haitian National Police Force and provided critical security in the chaotic aftermath of the 2010 earthquake. So the RCMP is forced to be three things at once: a federal agency like the FBI, a local police force like a state trooper, and a national symbol on peacekeeping missions. This three-way split is the force's fundamental, unmanageable flaw. As critics cited during the 2022 Emergencies Act Commission pointed out, this is a profound misallocation of resources. The new recruits' formative experience is in provincial and local policing. This is an approach no other advanced country uses to recruit, train, and deploy their federal police forces. We are asking small-town local police to also be high-level experts on foreign interference, transnational crime, and complex cyber attacks. The structure is built for failure, as the 2022 Rouleau Commission on the Emergencies Act revealed. When a true national crisis hits, this hybrid structure makes the police force, or the federal police force, indecisive and of little use. This tension between the myth and the mandate has shattered publicly several times in the force's history. The first time was in 1935. The myth of the polite, neutral Mountie was obliterated during the Great Depression. The On to Ottawa trek was a mass protest by thousands of unemployed men who left the government's relief camps in British Columbia to take their grievances to Ottawa. The federal government ordered the RCMP to stop them. The force held over 1,000 trekkers in Regina. On July the 1st, 1935, when a solidarity rally was held, the RCMP charged the crowd. This sparked what was known as the Regina Riot. Hours of hand-to-hand fighting in the streets. The Mountie was no longer a neutral peacekeeper. He was, in this moment, a violent arm of the state used to suppress working-class protest. The second and perhaps most significant crack came in the 1970s when the force's intelligence mandate, inherited from the 1920s merger, exploded. During the 1970 October crisis, when the FLQ, or Front de Libération de Québec, kidnapped a British diplomat and Quebec minister, the RCMP security service was caught unprepared. Under intense political pressure to get results, the security service went rogue. This was not an aberration. It was the inevitable consequence of the 1920 amalgamation. The force's old 1890s police state culture of inventing laws to get a job done was now in charge of a secret spy agency. In 1977, allegations of criminality and criminal activity by the RCMP led to a royal commission known as the MacDonald Commission. The findings were released in 1981, and they were staggering. The RCMP's dirty tricks era included legally burning a barn in Quebec to prevent a rumored meeting between the FLQ and the Black Panther Party, stealing the membership list of the Parti Québécois, a legitimate democratic political party, conducting hundreds of illegal warrantless break-ins, illegally opening the mail of Canadian citizens, and forging documents to mislead the public. The MacDonald Commission came to a stunning conclusion. The RCMP was incapable of policing itself. It recommended that the security or secret intelligence role be divorced from the RCMP. This recommendation led directly to the 1984 creation of CSIS, the Canadian Security Intelligence Service. This was a direct public admission that the 1920 merger had been a 60-year failure. You cannot have a public-facing police force which must uphold the law and a secret spy agency which is often tasked with bending it in the same organization. While the force's mandate was cracking on the outside, its internal culture was facing its own revolution. For 100 years, the force was exclusively male. Then, on May the 23rd, 1974, Commissioner M.J. Naden announced the RCMP would begin accepting applications from women for regular police duties. In September of 1974, the first 32 female recruits, known as Troop 17, arrived at the training academy in Regina. The integration was fraught. The 1970s saw conflicts and difficulties as women entered the deeply male-dominated occupation. For decades, female officers reported feeling less than fully integrated and facing workplace incivilities. This toxic culture of sexual harassment and discrimination culminated in the 2010s with massive high-profile lawsuits and settlements rocking the force's reputation. But the force's longest and most broken relationship is with the Indigenous peoples of Canada. This relationship began in the 1870s with the forced relocation from railway lands, and it has been defined by the force's role as the enforcer of colonial policies. By the end of the 20th century, this relationship was defined by scandals like the Starlight Tours. This refers to the allegations in Saskatchewan where Indigenous men such as Neil Stonechild were apprehended by police, driven to the edge of town in the dead of winter, and abandoned to freeze to death. The final devastating blow to the myth of the Mountie as a universal protector came in 2019 with the final report of the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls. The report was a damning indictment of the entire Canadian justice system, and it singled out the police. It cited decades of police indifference and systemic discrimination as a direct cause of the violence. The report's calls for justice were not gentle suggestions. They were demands for fundamental policing reforms. They called for an independent body to reinvestigate cold cases and robust Indigenous civil police oversight. The inquiry's conclusion was blunt. The RCMP have not proven to Canada that they are capable of holding themselves to account. In response, the RCMP issued statements on reconciliation and promised to give careful consideration to the report. But in 2024, 5 years after the report was delivered, the Assembly of First Nations issued its own report card, and it found minimal or no progress on most of the calls for justice. This brings us to the 21st century. All of this history, the flawed mandate, the impossible Hollywood myth, and the systemic failure in practice has come to a head. The 2020 Nova Scotia attacks, the worst mass killing in modern Canadian history, revealed deep and tragic failures in the RCMP's command, communication, and public warning systems. Testimony at the 2022 Rouleau Commission on the Emergencies Act painted a picture of an indecisive federal police force that is of little use during a genuine national crisis. Public Trust has created a 2022 Ecos poll found that only 57% of Canadians expressed satisfaction with the RCMP. And that means that public trust has cratered. The public perception is now more than ever influenced by American media events. A 2020 study noted a substantial drop in Canadians' confidence in their police beginning immediately after the murder of George Floyd by an American police officer. This has revealed the most crucial point of all. The two Mounties I spoke of at the beginning of this show, the icon and the institution, are no longer a simple paradox. They now represent a fundamental social cleavage in Canada itself. Public perception of the Mountie is no longer unified. It's a national fault line. A 2024 public opinion research study for the Government of Canada laid this bare. It found that older participants, particularly those who are white, tend to have high levels of trust and see the red surge as a quintessential image of Canada, fostering national pride. But for younger, racialized, and Indigenous participants, the exact same image carries negative connotations of colonialism and Indigenous oppression. They expressed vocal distrust and a lack of confidence. The myth and the reality are no longer coexisting. They are at war. How you see the Mountie in 2025 depends entirely on who you are and where you stand in Canadian society. If you see the Rosemarie or Due South myth, you feel pride. If you see the history of the Regina riot, the Starlight Tours, or the murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls report, you feel fear and oppression. The Mountie is no longer a symbol of Canada. It's a symbol of Canadian and Canada's divisions. Today, the force is being pulled apart by its own contradictory mandate. It is a modern, high-level federal agency built to fight foreign actor threats and complex cyber attacks. Or is it a local police force for 700 detachments? Can it be possible to be both? Decades of reports have called for the same structural reforms, chief among them ending the unmanageable contract policing model. But as of 2023 report notes, there is a lack of political and financial will to do anything about it. The iconic image of red-coated Mounties providing justice on the frontier, one critic wrote, is a relic of a bygone era. And the force remains trapped in a reform loop, unable to escape its own myth. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police is Canada's most powerful, most complex, and most contradictory symbol. It's a 19th century colonial patrol that became a 20th century national spy agency, a local police force by default, and a Hollywood movie star by accident. Today, the myth, the clean, heroic, infallible rider, is at war with the mandate, a sprawling, overstretched, and deeply flawed institution. The question for Canada in the 21st century is no longer, do they always get their man? The question is whether an institution forged to clear the plains and run a police state can ever truly be reformed to serve a modern, multicultural, and critical society that has, for many, stopped believing in the myth. Can this force regain the trust it needs to maintain le droit, to uphold the right? Or is myth finally fully broken? My thanks again to our sponsors this evening, Carry Movers Limited, a proudly Canadian family-owned and operated company for over 20 years, serving families and businesses in Metro Vancouver, the Fraser Valley, and with long-distance relocations throughout Western Canada and the North. You can find them online at www.carrymovers.com. Now, as we wrap up the show, I did want to show another video, though, to celebrate the many women in law enforcement and 40 years of women working hard to enforce the laws across the country in the RCMP. So let's take a quick peek at this video, and we will follow that with a quick video about Canada and our policing in peacekeeping missions, both domestic benefits. So we'll take a look at that as well after we take a look at this video to honor the many women in the red surge.
Women in the RCMP. And he just kind of looked at me and he said, because there isn't, with really no explanation. But again, it was the 70s.
And it was like being in a fishbowl, because everywhere we walked or marched. There were cameras following us when we were trying to eat our meals, and everybody was waiting to see if we would succeed or fail.
Je me souviens aussi, il y a certaines perquisitions où est-ce que j'entendais les gars dire « On n'amènera pas une fille là, qu'est-ce qu'on va faire avec elle? On va te pogner avec elle. »
Je pense que ce que les femmes ont apporté dans l'organisation, c'est une façon différente de penser, une façon différente de voir les choses, une approche complètement différente de certaines situations.
Il y avait un kiosque de la GRC, puis je me souviens encore de ce membre-là, un homme. Et puis, j'avais vraiment pas d'idée c'était quoi la GRC, là, mais cet homme-là avait tellement un charisme incroyable que quand je l'ai regardé, j'ai dit, quand je vais être grande, là, c'est ça que je vais faire.
She says we take women in the RCMP, and the guy said, I just heard it on the news, and he had this dumbstruck look on his face, like the world was coming to an end very quickly, and he said, well, what do we do? And he says, give her an application form. So that was day one.
So when thinking back, I was 22 years old, very, very naive. I'd never seen a policewoman except for Eve on Ironside. And I thought, if she can do it, I can do it too, darn it.
I was in awe, and I was excited. Yeah, I could hardly wait to meet the other people who were coming.
One of the members from Alberta who hadn't got the memo about not driving your car on base, especially up to a dorm, had pulled up and thought that the drill sergeant looked a little bit like a doorman and called him over to help her remove her bags from her car, and that did not go over very well at all. There was a lot of shouting, and we ran to the window to look and found our troopmate sort of aghast and being shouted at. I think something to the effect, if you can't get your bags in there yourself, you better go home. And so we grabbed her bags before she could change her mind, dragged her upstairs, and wouldn't let her leave.
La camaraderie au niveau de la GRC, c'est quelque chose qui est vraiment unique. On fait partie d'une grande famille. Puis à partir du moment où les gens arrivent à dépôt, on commence déjà à parler de la famille de la GRC, comment on est proches ensemble.
Our uniforms were designed by the company that designed the flight attendant uniforms for Air Canada. So you can imagine that they weren't very practical for police work.
We wore shoes that had about 1.5 inch heel. And of course, when you go out into the field, I went to a rural area and I had a foot chase through a plowed field. And I went back to my staff sergeant and I said, you know, we need to do something about these issue shoes because they're just not appropriate.
They started off wanting us to carry a gun in a purse for operational policing, which was absolutely unheard of. And our instructors at Depot told us that we'd have more luck hitting people over the head with this purse than ever getting a gun out of it.
Je peux pas dire que j'en garde de mauvais souvenirs. Ça a été difficile, mais c'était correct. C'était correct. C'était pas si pénible que ça, au fond. Fait que je me dis, si nous, on a passé au travers comme ça, l'avenir est excellent pour le futur de l'organisation.
The secretary came to the counter and said, oh, can I help you? And I said, yes, you certainly can. I said, I'm Karen Summers, and I'm the new member. And she kind of looked at me, she was a little bit flustered, and said, okay. She said, I'll get the detachment commander. I said, okay. So I just kind of stood there very patiently, and all of a sudden I could see out of the corner of my eye all these heads kind of peeking around the corner at me and kind of looking and saying, oh, so that's what she looks like.
My first posting in Stony Plain, I spent a lot of time we patrolled 2 reserves and we worked alone. And so I guess I became very comfortable early on because I knew that was how the job had to be done. And I can honestly say that I never went into a situation where I was afraid, perhaps a little apprehensive, but I had a job to do.
So the staff sergeant called me into the office and he said, you know, your first night shift is tonight. And I said, yes. He said, well, are you scared? And I said, no, not particularly. And he said, well, I am. And he had me a cushion and he said, I want you to sit on this when you're working tonight. And I go, well, why? I can see fine out of the police car. And he said, well, maybe so, but you look bigger. And it's important to look bigger in the police car because you don't look very big. And as you're driving around, if you look bigger, then people won't give you as much of a hard time.
Quand je suis arrivée à Québec, on m'attendait. Mais il y avait déjà quelqu'un qui avait passé. Il y avait une fille qui était là avant moi. Elle était dans un autre secteur. Moi, j'étais affectée à la section douane et accises. Et puis, on m'attendait, mais ce qui est arrivé, c'est qu'il y avait un gros projet en cours. Puis ce projet-là a fait en sorte que j'ai été facilement intégrée avec le groupe parce qu'on faisait énormément de surveillance, on travaillait 24 heures par jour, puis ça a duré comme 2 mois. Donc, on a appris à se connaître beaucoup. Puis moi, ça a facilité mon intégration. Et puis, j'ai appris à connaître mes collègues de travail aussi. Fait que, puis même, il y en a qui s'en vantent encore, ils ont été beaucoup mes protecteurs. Ça fait que j'ai pas vraiment subi de choses majeures parce que j'avais confiance à ces gens-là, eux avaient confiance en moi, puis on s'est bien intégrés ensemble.
The acceptance by the majority of the guys wasn't difficult, but there was always somebody who didn't think we had a place and they didn't want to work with females. Or you get a comment, I want to talk to a real member.
Même, je me souviens une fois sur un dossier où il y a un gars qui a dit, il me regarde, il dit, t'es-tu une femme police? J'ai dit, oui, je suis les deux. Je suis une femme, puis je suis une police.
Where's the lady cop? I want her to come and deal with me. And I remember one night I was home and in bed, sound asleep, and there was a woman in particular who had been arrested, and she was not going to go into cells until I got there. So I went down. It didn't take me long to get there, and she said, well, finally. And she said, okay, let's go.
There was a situation where we were doing a search in Winnipeg, and a fella ran out the door we didn't want him running out the door, and 3 of us took off after him. And we managed to struggle him down to the ground. And I was the one that put the handcuffs on. And my partner said, Karen, you're a part of this organization, you're part of this unit, and we have belief in you. And that was a momentous moment for me.
Disons que c'était pas très bien reçu initialement. Et puis même les épouses des policiers avaient fait une pétition pour essayer d'empêcher mon embauche là-bas. Puis il y avait plusieurs choses qui se passaient de ce style-là. Puis il a fallu que j'ai adressé les femmes des policiers pour les rassurer que j'étais pour être là, que j'étais bien formée. Puis mon but était vraiment de travailler et non rien d'autre là, que les gens pouvaient s'imaginer.
It took about 15 years for women to have the right to wear the uniform that everybody recognizes as the icon of the force, with the Stetson and the high browns.
And I remember coming home when my girls were still at school and looking in a mirror, putting my Stetson on my head and starting to cry. That was a huge day for me, to have finally attained the equality in appearance as our male counterparts.
Mais quand il y a une femme là, souvent la personne qui est devant toi ne sent pas le besoin de te confronter physiquement parce qu'ils savent que, évidemment, si on a une confrontation physique, là, vraiment je parle d'une bataille, là, que les hommes sont généralement en avantage. C'est la réalité.
The Canadian policing environment and the Canadian policing tradition is much more a tradition of community policing and being a part of a bigger solution. And I think that's why in Canada we call our police officers peace officers rather than law enforcement officers, because law enforcement is kind of what you do when everything else fails.
Aujourd'hui, la compassion, c'est une de nos valeurs fondamentales à la GRC, une de nos 6 valeurs fondamentales. Je suis convaincue que c'est l'arrivée des femmes, puis des premières femmes, je ne parle même pas de moi, là, 10 ans plus tard, je parle des premières femmes à la GRC, qui a fait changer cette attitude-là envers la façon, l'approche envers les gens.
Et finalement, c'est resté. C'est encore ancré au sein de la division, puis le commandant actuel a poursuivi ce que moi j'avais commencé. Fait que c'est valorisant de voir que ce que tu as essayé de mettre en place, que tu as débuté, finalement a abouti à quelque chose et puis que ça se poursuit. Puis je retourne régulièrement au bureau parce que maintenant, je m'occupe de l'association, je suis présidente de l'association des retraités. Et puis, des fois, j'ai l'impression que je n'ai pas vraiment quitté.
Everything is possible for women today, where it wasn't possible 40 years ago. And to me, that is exciting for the next generation of women moving forward in the RCMP.
So as you can see, the history of women within law enforcement, they started out with quite the challenge in front of them, and that was being accepted. And unfortunately, that type of misogynistic and at times sexual harassment did not die down over years. It continued and resulted in a lot of lawsuits and a lot of settlements. Today, we'd like to think that it is a better force, that they are treated much better than they were, but there are times when they're not. And that's where we have to demand better of those in charge, of the system that has created an environment that still allows such things to continue. So as we finish up here, I just wanted to give you also a bit of an idea as to the role of the RCMP in international assignments. And let's take a look at that. Again, thank you to the RCMP for the videos that we are viewing. And once again, I hope that you've enjoyed this episode. If you have anything that you want to call in and talk about, by all means, you're welcome to do that. The phone line is open at 604-385-5093.
Canada's International Police Peace Operations Program is one of the most robust in the world. Since 1989, over 3,800 Canadian police officers from municipal, provincial, and national law enforcement agencies have worked in more than 66 peace operations in 33 countries. Their efforts support foreign countries experiencing conflict and instability to move toward peace and stability. In places like Ukraine, the West Bank, and Haiti, our police officers train and mentor local police. They help them develop programs to reduce violence, to fight organized crime, and to investigate sexual and gender-based violence. Canadian police are in high demand due to their expertise and capabilities. And our role in these operations continues to be flexible in order to meet the security needs of the host country.
While on mission, police officers develop professionally and personally through opportunities they would not have at home. This experience not only benefits them and their police service, but it also impacts the communities and the people they serve in Canada.
We've seen individuals who are in better position to lead. Their leadership skills have changed dramatically. They've had to deal with individuals from all different types of countries, and specifically those individuals that they were working with in missions. They learn from them how to do things and how not to do things. And so when they come back, they're in a better position to be able to deal with the specific challenges of policing in Canada today, and they're also able to share those skills with other police officers.
La mission leur donne une ouverture sur les autres cultures, une tolérance à l'égard des valeurs et des façons de faire qui sont différentes de les nôtres. Ce n'est pas systématique, mais je constate une amélioration de différentes compétences de notre personnel. Entre autres, la gestion de soi, je parle de la création de partenariats, la prise de décision, le leadership qui se développe davantage. J'encourage les organisations policières qui ont la capacité de participer à des projets de mission de paix, de s'impliquer dans le partage de leurs ressources.
Coming home, you're a different person. You've overcome such adversity. The growth was phenomenal, and I was able to bring that back here. But I think as a leader, as a communicator, as a networker, you learn so much, and this has changed the way that I go to work on a daily basis.
I honestly think everyone who's heading into a managerial or supervisor or leadership position should do a mission.
Given the opportunity, I would definitely go again. I wouldn't think twice about it. I think there's still a lot for me to learn and a lot for me to bring back to the Ottawa Police Service and as well the Ottawa community.
Écoutez, Mon côté personnel, je peux vous dire que autant avant qu'après, tu deviens un meilleur policier et aussi une meilleure personne. On a tous un bagage. Tu côtoies des gens de tous les pays. Tu ne peux pas faire autre chose que d'apprendre. Alors, tu te nourris de tout ce que les gens font, tu prends tout et tu reviens ici un meilleur policier et aussi une meilleure personne.
Que lorsque les gens vont faire le bien sur la planète ou dans une communauté quelconque, c'est parce que c'est inné chez eux. Et quand ils reviennent, ça se perd pas, ça bouille en dedans de nous. Et c'est certain que ces gens-là vont appliquer les mêmes principes au retour en sol québécois ou canadien.
Participating on a mission serves as accelerated training. Police officers receive about 2 to 3 years of experience from a 1-year deployment. Their responsibilities are often at a higher level than their duties at home, and they return to Canada with increased competencies and skills.
My job here, like in forensics, I feel that much more stronger when I go about making decisions or even working, like being responsible for the unit while my boss is away. He will sort of let a more senior person, take charge while he's gone. So again, the roles in mission, where I was in charge there at certain times during the mission, helped me take charge here.
Donc j'étais la chef de l'équipe, si on peut dire, superviseur. J'avais 8 personnes à ma charge, si on peut dire. Puis cette fonction-là m'a apporté d'autres responsabilités que je croyais pas non plus avoir en me rendant en mission, mais que j'ai pu développer. Puis je me suis rendu compte que j'avais peut-être un peu plus comment je dirais, de leadership en moi, plus que j'aurais pu le penser.
Mass murder scenes, I've had to process that, and then you come back here and deal with a homicide scene or a shooting. It's now that much easier because I've dealt with it on such a large scale with people with different languages, different backgrounds, and different procedures and customs, that all of a sudden you realize how much easier it is to break a problem down and solve it back here.
The experience Canadian police officers gain while working on a mission impacts how they work when they come home. They find unique ways to approach people who live in the communities they serve. They are more aware and understanding of cultural differences.
The world that we live in today is different. Our Canada is different, and it is made up of Canadians from all walks of life and from all different nationalities. And by sending peace officers abroad to work with various communities with cultural backgrounds that are different from what we're used to here in Canada, we enhance what policing skills we bring to our Canadian population.
En Haïti, on le sait, le rythme de vie n'est pas celui de Montréal ou celui de nos régions. C'est complètement différent. Être en contact avec des policiers de différents pays crée des liens et permet d'établir un réseau et de partager les bonnes pratiques policières qui, par la suite, peuvent être enrichissantes dans notre organisation.
Une des choses que j'ai retenues du fait d'être allé en mission comme policier canadien et qu'on a développé là-bas, puis qui va rester au retour, c'est l'approche envers les différentes communautés. Travailler avec des gens qui ont des cultures différentes et de prendre le temps d'écouter et de voir les différences et puis de respecter ces différences-là sans changer notre façon d'opérer.
I encourage anybody who wants to go on a mission. It takes you to a level of another level of growth that I can't tell you in words. I think when you allow officers to go on peacekeeping missions, I think you bring back a more integrated person who actually can give back more to their community. The experience and the level of learning and the return on investment for your home organization and for Canada, it's incredible.
In any of the work internationally that I have done, I feel that I have brought home more, and I have gained more than I've given. That wasn't what I set out for, but that's inevitably how I have felt. And my community here at home benefits from that when I come home. The gifts that we give to our international community, we gain those dividends coming home. and they are in relationship building. They are in increased personal competencies.
Living and working in another country offers a completely different perspective. Police officers learn about the local population and culture. They live by seeing and experiencing the reality of the host country. This experience makes Canadian police officers well-rounded and better able to understand and relate to the people they serve at home, bringing tremendous value to their police service.
Participating in international peace operations is beneficial for police officers and their police services as it leads to safer homes and communities here in Canada. By deploying our Canadian police officers to address criminality in failed and fragile states, we can help limit the reach of certain crimes and prevent them from spreading to Canada. Keeping Canadians safe is the foundation of Canada's international policing efforts.
So again, you can see how the importance of the international deployments can help to build a better, safer, and more stable Canada. And in that, I mean, a lot of hate goes towards police officers out on the front lines. And it really needs to be said that that is, in a lot of times, misdirected. We need to understand that the police are a part of our community. They are people who live and work and contribute to each and every community in which they live. Their kids are out there on the school grounds with your kids at recess. Their kids are also participating in the hockey programs, playing hockey against or alongside your children. So again, if we try to find a way to encompass and respect the law enforcement, to find ways to improve the systems in which they are working in, to ensure that they are not overburdened with large numbers of overtime and extra days of work. We need to ensure that they have a life-work balance as well. And in a strained police system that is needing more officers and more resources, we need to be able to accommodate that and to make sure that that becomes a priority, as well as making sure that they have the tools to do their job efficiently, effectively, and to keep them healthy. So once again, there are challenges within the RCMP. There are challenges within all Canadian police departments, but I think the bigger issue is how we work with our law enforcement agencies to make sure that they have the tools for success. And again, for all of those who put their lives on the line each and every day to protect Canada, to protect Canadian citizens, and the guests and tourists who visit our nation, I say thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. That's it for Live Chat with James today. I'm glad that you've tuned in. I hope that you got something out of this last hour that we've been talking about the RCMP, the history, the current situation, and potentially a better future for all. Thank you again for tuning in. I'm James Cousineau at the ProPix TV studios here in Vancouver, British Columbia. Take care, stay safe. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, and of course, share this video with others. See you tomorrow, folks.